Welcome to our last of the videos we're producing discussing the Diocesan Lent Book, Dethroning Mammon. I'm joined today by Dick France once again, he's a lay reader near Trentham, and John White, he's a Youth and Vocations. Go on, tell me your proper title.
Youth and Vocations Enabler, if you want to be fancy about it.
Enabler for the diocese. There we go, thanks for joining me once more, gentlemen. We're talking about this final chapter, what we master brings us joy. And for the first time, the book takes us out of the Gospels and into the book of Revelation. Quite scary. We begin by looking at one of the letters to the churches, Laodicea. And it's really interesting. Laodicea is a place where people think they are wealthy, think they have got what they need in life. And Jesus comes and tells them that they are wrong. And I wonder, do you think that sort of illusion of people thinking they are wealthy, thinking they have everything they need, is something that people, perhaps even Christian people, fall into today? How do we deceive ourselves, or how does money deceive us?
There's this temptation for money to be this kind of barrier of highlighting our true need for God. Okay. What
sort of ways does money become a barrier for people, do you think? How might it hide what our true needs are?
Well, certainly the pursuit of it and thinking that if you have enough of it, you don't need anyone or anything. You're sort of in control.
Yes.
And in my life, that's a complete illusion. And I reckon in many as well, but I can't speak for anybody else.
So if money gives us an illusion of being in control, what sort of things do we think perhaps we can control with our money? What are the things that people think perhaps it can protect them from? Or
sure, there's a challenge with thinking that money has the ability to. It's possible for people to be tempted to think that money will enable them to permanently have a great life in general. So, you know, I can afford to have a nice house, or I can afford to have a nice car. I can have the trappings of life that make things seem that you're successful and loads of people like you. Yeah. When actually you can have tons of cash, you can have loads of resources, but actually if you haven't got relationship with other people, then actually you're missing a trick. Yeah.
So actually all the things that he's been talking about through the book that we value because we can see them, or because we can measure them, or because we think they are ours, all of those things are an illusion in a sense. If we're coming to rely on them, to trust them, to think that they give us control over the world or our lives, that they'll protect us from harm in different ways. All of that actually is an illusion, isn't it? But it's an illusion that's very easy to fall into.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's filling in a sort of blank in your life, whether it's watching a violent movie, or having too many drinks, or any kind of addiction. Yeah. It's a form of escape from that sort of pain that a lot of people feel in life. Yeah. And if they can have that right relationship with God, and therefore with other people, then that sort of pain subsides.
You don't need
that space being filled in. I've felt it myself when I've been on my own. Sometimes I thought, I've got to put this movie on or that movie and keep filling the time up.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm happy when the TV isn't on and I'm reading not always something from the Bible, but maybe something that's with a bit more spiritual content. Yeah. And I feel good at the end of it and not wound up.
Yeah. One of the things he contrasts in the chapter is Babylon. Compares the god of Mammon with what's going on in Babylon in Revelation chapter 18. And the great lie there is that Babylon will last forever. And I think that, that's one of the great lies we tell ourselves about these kind of things we've been talking about that we put in place, isn't it? But actually, if it's the alcohol, if it's the drugs or the sex or the kind of hoarding up of stuff, it doesn't last forever, does it? And so there's a deceit involved in that as well. We don't let ourselves think.
Yeah, I struggled a bit with the title, as said beforehand, and it took a while for me to realise what it meant about what we master brings us joy, because I think it referred to the mastering of Babylon makes room for the rejoicing in heaven.
Yeah.
And it's only when I got to that I realised what the chapter was about. It's about mastering your life through Jesus, which takes you away from being bound by addictions or whatever else that sort of ties you up. And the thing that came out for me strongly through the whole thing, and I've read it loads of times, but this time it really came out. In another part of the Bible, Gospel, it says, knock and it shall be opened. Well, here he says, listen, I'm standing at the door knocking.
Yes.
He's knocking. If you hear my voice and open the door. Now, why don't we always hear his voice if he's always knocking?
Yeah.
Because these things get in the way.
We're drowning it out with all the signs.
It's a bit like Elijah wanting you heard him in the quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, really interesting.
And if you fill your life with stuff.
There's this tension as well, isn't there, though? Like, so there's this wanting to place things that aren't God in. We want to hold everything in tension so that we don't deny the usefulness of money or the goodness.
Right. So that's the thing where he comes to, we're thinking about the difference between Mammon being our master, being on the throne, or having money as our servant, and how we can then use it to show love or act generously or build relationships, many of the things that have come up earlier in the book.
Absolutely.
How can we examine ourselves to see whether Mammon is our master or our servant? What might be some good ways of starting to think about that in our own lives and be sure we're getting that in the right perspective? Any ideas?
There's something really helpful to think. It's a standard one that everyone immediately goes to, but it often says who. So if you're currently kind of a regular worshipping member of a church, are you giving a chunk of your income to that church?
I think just generally
local ministry,
doing a review of your actual monthly budget, your outgoings, reveals a lot, doesn't it, about where your priorities are with that, and not just your giving to church, but also all kinds of other ways that you might be using that money. Indeed. Or hoarding that money, or using that money just for yourself, or are you using it for other people? All kinds of ways that you might
just
look at that.
Not just money either, is it? It's power, and the two seem to go hand in hand. If you've got power, you can get money fairly easily, and vice versa.
Yes.
It was said in the book.
Yes.
But certainly people can do things. I've seen it in the church where they're doing something that may be seen as very for God, but they're actually doing it for themselves.
Yeah.
Now, is that necessarily bad? I'm not going to judge anybody on that. But
it's a thing to examine ourselves.
Examine ourselves, absolutely. I've never wanted to be a humble person, but like when you lead a course or something, am I really doing it for God, or just because I enjoy it and I think I'll do a good job?
Yeah. And
sometimes you can be overcritical, and actually maybe you've got a gift to do something and you should get on with it and not worry about it.
I think that's right. There's all kinds of things which we might say sometimes those are right and sometimes those are wrong, and people need to examine themselves prayerfully and carefully. I just want to move on very briefly. He does talk quite a lot at the end of the book and the end of this chapter about some really quite impressive and big ways that the church has called society to change. So Jubilee 2000 he mentions, and the whole fair trade scheme he mentions, ways that Christians have actually seen something that is wrong in society and acted to change that. And I just wonder, as we finish, whether how would you encourage someone in your churches who sees something wrong in our society, something unjust, or some way that money is being used to abuse people or power, where should they start? What should they do?
Sure. One of the most helpful ways is to do just a web search first off. So have a little look online. If there's a particular issue that you're interested in, I would...
see if other people are already...
I'm sure there's probably
working on that,
doing something about that. And if not, then have a chat with maybe your vicar, friends around you. Say, hey, I've noticed this thing, and I'm not entirely sure that it's right. Could we maybe do something about that?
Yeah.
Could you write to your MP?
Great.
Could you ask one of the campaigning organisations that kind of crowdfund or create allow other people to create campaigns under their kind of banner with their IT platform or what have you? Start something on there.
Fantastic. Yeah, I don't know whether you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's just one of the things in the book. We mustn't feel we need to dethrone Mammon all by ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes these things are so big and awesomely bad, you think, well, I can't make a difference. And I was in Colombia recently and I talked to somebody who thought there will never be peace there, and he voted against it.
Wow.
Not because he didn't want peace, but he didn't like, like problems we've had in Northern Ireland and all that sort of thing. And he didn't believe it was possible. But I always come back to the starfish story. You throw one back and it made a difference to that one starfish.
Yeah.
So I think if you find something that needs doing, and I'm not the best at this by any means, if you can just do it for one person, I think God will put other things in your way.
Brilliant.
He'll help you do it.
Brilliant. I love the bit where he talks about how we now eat 3,000 fair trade bananas a minute or something. No one person is doing that. Are they?
That's a very quick
I mean, that's like Andy Murray, getting that.
Chewing.
Actually, that takes thousands of us to do. So that is my challenge for us as we end this, to think not just about your own life, but actually to look at society. Maybe your local community, maybe wider society than that. Is there something you can see as wrong? Well, my challenge to you is to think, what can I do? How can I start to do something about that, to be the change that Jesus wants to happen in the world?